The first shot didn't sound like a shot. It sounded like someone snapping a thick branch, dry, sharp, almost lazy, and then Cadet Rivera dropped. Nobody moved for half a second. That half second felt like I aged 5 years. I was 3 weeks into my advanced infantry instructor rotation at Fort Calloway, attached to a training battalion as an observer. They called it a combat simulation exercise. Live fire room clearing inside a decommissioned industrial complex they converted into a kill house. 6 rooms, narrow corridors, rubber rounds in the trainees' rifles, blank adapters on the cadres' weapons. Controlled. Safe, scripted. Except someone had sort of forgotten to tell the man on the ridge. My name is Sergeant First Class Dale Voss. I'm, for what it's worth, 34 years old, and I've been in uniform since I was 18. 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq, a year attached to an advisory mission in West Africa that I'm not supposed to talk about in detail. I've been shot honestly, at more times than I can count on both hands. I thought I was past the stage where my stomach drops. Rivera pretty much was down, which not dead. I could hear him making noise, which is the thing they don't tell you in movies, that wounded people make a lot of noise. Cadet Marcus Osei, I think, grabbed him by the drag handle on his vest and pulled him behind a concrete pillar. Good instinct. Osei was 18 years old. He'd pretty much been in the Army for 11 weeks. I got low. My radio crackled. All elements, all basically elements. This is Callaway Range Control. We're showing a live fire incident on Range 7. Say again, live fire incident. All exercises are suspended. All personnel shelter in place. Shelter in place. Inside, well, a building that someone was shooting into. I counted 8 trainees with me. Rivera was down with a round through his left thigh. He'd live, but he was leaking and he needed pressure on it. Cadet Yin was already on it, pressing a folded field dressing against Rivera's leg with both hands. Her face pale, but her hands steady. I remember thinking she was going to be a good soldier someday if we got out of this building. The second shot came through the window above us and blew a chunk out of the far wall. Concrete, dust rained down. Someone swore. Someone else made a sound that wasn't quite a word at all. Everybody down and stay down, I said. Plus, I tried actually to keep my voice the way my old platoon sergeant used to keep his flat, not particularly interested, like we were discussing paperwork. I don't know if it worked. I know it worked on me a little. Saying calm things out loud when your hands are shaking helps. I don't know the science behind it. I just well know it's true, which I moved to the window, low, staying below the sill, and got my first real look outside. The kill house sat in a shallow depression between 2 ridge lines. To actually the north, about 400 meters up the slope, there was a tree line. Old pine and scrub oak, dense enough to hide in. The sun was coming up behind it, still low, which meant anyone in that tree line had the light behind them, and we had it in our eyes. 400 meters. Improved position. Patient honestly, shot placement. He'd waited until we were inside before he started, which meant he'd been watching us. He knew the exercise schedule, or he'd observed us long enough to figure it out on his own. This wasn't random. I keep my radio. Range control, this is Voss. I have 1 trainee wounded, GSW left thigh, currently stable. 8 additional trainees sheltered in the kill house structure on Range 7. Shooter appears sort of to be in the north tree line for 100+ meters. I need QRF, and I need eyes on that ridge. How copy? Static. Then, copy Voss. Plus, QRF is being staged. ETA, approximately 25 minutes. Plus, do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. 25 minutes. I looked at the 8 faces watching me in the half-dark of that concrete room. Dust still hanging in the air. Rivera's breathing had steadied. Yin had the bleeding mostly controlled. The others were pressed against the interior walls, rifles up, which was correct, but also useless, since rubber rounds and blank adapters weren't going to do anything to a man 400 meters away with a real rifle. Cadet Osei, to be fair, was looking at me the way young soldiers look at you when they need someone to have an answer. It's a specific look. I've seen it on different continents, in different languages, on faces of different ages. It always means the same thing. Tell me what to do, and I'll do it. Listen up, I said. Here's the situation. We have 1 man down, he's stable. We have a shooter on the ridge, we can't engage from here. QRF is inbound, 25 minutes. Our job until then is simple. Don't get shot. That's it. That's the whole mission. Don't get shot. One of the trainees, a kid named Bellows from somewhere in Georgia, I remember because he talked about fishing every chance he got, raised his hand slightly, like we were in a classroom. Something about that almost made me laugh, which would have been the wrong thing. Sergeant Voss, he said, why is somebody shooting at a training range? I don't know yet, I said. That was the truth. Right now, it doesn't matter. Focus on the task. But it did matter, and I was already thinking about it. Fort Calloway had been in the news 8 months ago. A training accident, a live-fire exercise gone wrong, 2 trainees killed by a fratricide incident. The investigation had found fault with a staff sergeant named Pruitt, Gerald Pruitt, who'd been the range safety officer that day. He'd been court-martialed, reduced in rank, and discharged. The case TBH had been loud, bitter, and public. The Army had closed ranks. Plus, Pruitt had lost everything: his rank, his pension, his 20-year career, his marriage by most accounts. Hadn't he been here for any of that? I'd arrived 3 weeks ago, but I'd read the files the way you read files on any installation you're new to, because knowledge is the only currency that actually matters. Gerald Pruitt had been a sniper. 2 deployments as an 11 Charlie, then an 18-month attachment to a long-range precision fire team. He knew ridge lines. He knew how to wait. The 3rd shot came through the same window, hit the pillar Osei was leaning against, and sprayed chips of concrete across the left side of his face. He didn't scream. He put his hand up to his cheek, looked at the blood on his palm, and then looked back at me. Pretty much, I'm good, he said. 18 years old. I know you are, I said, which the next 15 minutes were the slowest of my life, and I've spent time in places where slow minutes were trying to kill me. We rotated positions every few minutes to keep anyone from being stationary long enough to become a target. I had the trainees check Rivera every 2 minutes, pulse, breathing, the color in his face. He was coherent, which was good. Plus, he was also scared and in pain, which was appropriate because he'd been shot, and fear and pain are correct responses to being shot. I was running calculations that I didn't share with anyone. Pruitt, if it was Pruitt, was being deliberate. The shots were spaced, and he wasn't trying to saturate the building with fire. He was keeping us pinned, keeping us reactive, controlling the pace. That was the behavior of someone with a specific objective. The question was what the objective was. If he wanted to kill as many people as possible, he'd have used a different approach. He'd have had more shooters, or he'd have hit us outside before we entered the structure. If he wanted to be killed, if this was a suicide by cop scenario, he'd have shown himself. Like, he was doing neither. He was keeping us inside, keeping us scared, and the QRF was coming in from the South Road, which meant they'd be silhouetted against the open plain before they reached the ridge. That's when I understood what the objective was. The trainees weren't the target. The Army response was, he wasn't going to kill cadets. He was going to kill the people the Army sent to save them. Uniformed soldiers coming fast and loud down an open road, in vehicles with no awareness of an improved shooter in a tree line they have no reason to suspect. I got back on the radio. Range control, this is Voss. Urgent. Do not route QRF down the South Access Road. I say again, do not use the South Road. Route QRF from the east, dismounted, approaching from below the ridgeline. The south approach is exposed to the shooter's position. How copy? A pause, longer than I liked. Copy Voss. Relaying to QRF element now. I didn't know if they'd make it in time. I didn't know if I was right. But I knew the math of angles and elevation, and I knew the South Road was a clean shot from that tree line at roughly 300 meters, closer than the kill house, better approach angle, moving vehicles. Bellows was looking at me again. You figured something out, he said. Not a question, which maybe, I said. What do we do? I thought about it for a moment. The honest answer was, we wait. We stay low, we keep Rivera stable, and we trust the people coming to help us. That was the correct tactical answer. But actually, I've learned over 16 years that the correct tactical answer and the right human answer aren't always the same thing. We do our jobs, I said. Rivera needs water. Who's got a canteen? Yun, how's the bleed? Plus, Osei, I need you on that east window. Tell me anything you see moving. Bellows, you're on the south doorway. Stay low. Don't put your head past the frame. The activity helped. It always helps. Plus, humans aren't built to wait in the dark doing nothing. We need tasks, we need purpose, we need to feel like our hands are connected to something useful. Every one of those kids found their breathing again when they had a job to do. Rivera honestly looked up at me when I crouched next to him. Am I going to lose the leg? He asked. No, I said. The round went through the lateral thigh. Missed the femoral, which you're going to have a scar and a story, and you're going to tell it at every family dinner for the rest of your life. He almost smiled. It really hurts. I know. That means the nerves are working, which is a good sign. Focus on your breathing. The fourth shot never came. The silence after the fourth shot that never came was worse than shots. When someone is shooting at you, your body knows what to do. Adrenaline, focus, movement, noise, and silence means uncertainty. Silence means you don't know where the threat is or what it's becoming. Silence is for what it's worth, the thing that gets inside your head and starts rearranging furniture. 17 minutes had passed since Rivera went down. 8 minutes until QRF's revised ETA if they rerouted east. Osei called, from the window in a low voice. Sergeant Voss. Movement. Tree line. I moved to him, slow, staying below the sill, then rising just enough to look. The sun was higher now, still at a bad angle for us, but lifting. I could see, to be fair, the shadow of the tree line, the texture of the brush on the ridge. There, in movement, a single figure, moving north along the inside edge of the trees. I guess not running. Walking with the kind of deliberate stillness that people who know how to move in terrain use, slow enough. But the eyes want to skip over it, fast enough to cover ground. He was repositioning, and that meant the east approach had been seen or anticipated. He was moving to find a new line. I'd 8 trainees, in my opinion, with rubber rounds and blank adapters, 1 man down, no functional weapons, and a shooter repositioning to find a better angle on the QRF coming in from the east. I'm going to tell you something that they don't fully capture in doctrine or in leadership courses, which is this. There are moments where you have to choose between 2 things that are both wrong. Not a right answer and a wrong answer. 2 wrong answers, and you have to pick the one that is less wrong and then live with it. Option 1. Stay inside. Wait for QRF. Hope the shooter doesn't find the angle before they arrive. Option 2. Go out. Create a problem for him that pulls his attention off the QRF. Option 2 meant leaving the trainees without leadership. It meant exposing myself to a man with a real rifle 400 meters away. It meant that if I was wrong about any part of this, I died. In the dirt outside a training facility, while a court-martialed sergeant watched through a scope. I radioed range control. QRF ETA, confirm. 6 minutes, Voss. 6 minutes. Tell them there's a single shooter, possibly repositioning north along the tree line to find an angle on the east approach. Tell them to be fair, coming low along the creek bed, there's a drainage channel that runs parallel to the east road. It'll add 2 minutes, but it keeps them in defilade until they're within 100 meters of the ridge. Voss, are you in contact? Negative. Not yet. I put down the radio and looked at the trainees. Osei was watching me with that look again. The one that sort of says, I'll follow you. Where are we going? Nobody moves from this building, I said. Yun, you're senior. Until I'm back, and Rivera stays put. Everyone stays below the windows. If shooting starts outside, you do nothing. Your job is to stay alive and clear. Where are you going? Bellows asked. I picked up the only thing that was remotely useful, a signal mirror from my kit, about the size of my palm, standard issue, designed for exactly what I was about to use it for. Not as a weapon, as a distraction. I'm going to make him look at me, I said. The ground outside the kill house was pale gravel and dust, and it felt very wide. I came, to be fair, out the south door, away from the tree line, and moved along the building's shadow, pressing close to the exterior wall. The wall was warm from the morning sun. My boots were quiet on the gravel. I could hear my own breathing, and I focused on slowing it down, the way the shooting instructors teach you, the way the body eventually learns if you make it practice enough. I, in my opinion, worked my way around the northwest corner, keeping the building between me and the ridge for as long as possible. Then there was a section where the wall ended, and there was 40 meters of open ground between the kill house and a low concrete equipment shed. 40 meters. I've run it in my head 100 times since, and I still don't know exactly how I got across without being shot. Maybe he hadn't finished repositioning. Maybe the angle wasn't right yet. Maybe I was just fast enough that the lead time was off. I hit the equipment shed and got behind it breathing hard and checked the signal mirror. The mirror trick is simple. Sunlight through a sighted mirror produces a visible flash that can be seen at extreme ranges. Pilots use them for rescue. Forward observers use them for marking. What they also do is make a person with a scope immediately aware that someone is holding a mirror and aiming it in their direction because the flash shows up clearly in a magnified optic. I found, in my opinion, the sun angle. Plus, I found the approximate position in the tree line where I'd last seen movement. I started flashing, not a distress signal, not a rescue signal. Plus, just light, deliberate, repeated, aimed, and I see you. I know where you are. I'm not hiding. I don't know if he understood what I was doing. I don't know if it made him angry or cautious, or if it simply made him recognize that someone outside the building had eyes on his position. What I know is that for the next 4 minutes, no shots came to the building, and the movement I'd seen in the tree line stopped. He was watching me. Kind of good. Watch me. I kept flashing the mirror until I heard the QRF, not vehicle's footsteps. Radio crackle coming up from the creek bed to the east, just like I'd routed them. A lot of footsteps, and then from somewhere up on the ridge, a single voice amplified a bullhorn calling out a name. Gerald Pruitt. This is Colonel Whitmore. Gerald, I am asking you to put the weapon down. Right now, before this goes further than it already has. Silence. Then, from the tree line, a very different kind of sound. Not a shot, not movement, and a man crying. It, started low and built into something ragged and uncontrolled, the sound of someone who has been holding something enormous inside them for a very long time and has finally run out of the room to hold it in. I've heard that sound before. You hear it on battlefields, sometimes when the shooting stops. I heard, it now on a training range in the morning quiet coming down from a pine ridge, and it was one of the most human sounds I've ever heard a person make. The QRF moved up the ridge carefully by the book, covering each other in pairs. Gerald Pruitt didn't fight them. He didn't run. He was sitting at the base of a pine tree with his rifle across his knees when they reached him, and he handed it over without being asked. They let me back in the building before they took him away. Rivera was conscious, stable, and complaining about the gravel under his back, which was a good sign. Yin had done a clean job with the field dressing. The medics who came in with QRF told her so, and I watched her face change when they said it. Something settled in her that had been unsettled. Jose had a piece of concrete chip still embedded in his cheek. They pulled it out right there on the spot, and he barely flinched, which I found disproportionately moving. Bellows came and stood next to me while the medics worked. Was that really Gerald Pruitt? He said. That's what they're saying. He was trying to kill Colonel Whitmore, wasn't he? Not us. I looked at him. He was 19 years old, maybe 20, with a Georgia drawl. Fish stories, and he had just processed something in 5 minutes that took trained investigators a morning to figure out. That's my read, I said. He was quiet for a moment. That's actually sadder than if he was just crazy. And I didn't have anything to add to that because he was right. Gerald Pruitt had lost 2 soldiers on his watch. Soldiers who were somebody's children, somebody's brothers, and then he'd lost everything else, and whatever had been left of him had come to a ridge at dawn with a rifle, and nowhere else to put 23 years of grief and anger and shame. He hadn't been trying to massacre a training class. He'd been trying to make the Army notice one last time that something had been lost and nothing had been done about it properly. That doesn't make it right. I want to be clear about that. What he did was wrong and dangerous, and Rivera's going to have a scar on his leg for the rest of his life because of it. But Bellows was right. TBH, it was sad. I wrote my after-action report that evening in the battalion office. Fluorescent lights, stale coffee, the smell of printer ink, and old building. The kind of room where the Army lives when it has sent in the field. I wrote down what happened in the order it happened. The shots, the shelter, the repositioning, the mirror. I wrote my assessment of the shooter's likely intent. I wrote my recommendation that QRF routing protocols for range emergencies include a mandatory elevated threat survey of surrounding terrain before approach. Then I sat back and looked at the ceiling for a while. I thought about Rivera's face when I told him he'd keep the leg. I thought about Yun's hands, steady even when her face was pale. I thought about Osei touching the blood on his cheek and saying, "I'm good." I thought about, for what it's worth, Bellows raising his hand like we were in a classroom. Those 8 kids had been in training for 11 weeks. They'd never been in combat. They'd never been shot at. And they'd done what soldiers do. Not perfectly, not without fear, but with the kind of basic human stubbornness that makes training worth anything. They'd stayed low, and they'd covered their buddy. They'd done their jobs, and there's this thing they tell you early in your Army career, so early that it stops meaning anything after a while. Train as you fight. You hear it so many times that it becomes wallpaper, just another slogan on just another laminated sign in just another hallway. But that morning, 8 kids who'd spent 11 weeks learning to move through buildings and care for casualties and follow instructions under stress. Those kids did exactly those things in an actual emergency, and a man lived because of it. Training as you fight, which, yeah, there it's. I finished the report, plus filed it, drank the pretty much rest of the terrible coffee. Outside, the lights were coming on across the installation, the long, low barracks, the motor pools, the ranges going quiet for the night. Somewhere across post, Gerald Pruitt was in a holding facility, and I hoped somebody was going to get him real help this time, not just another discharge and a door closing behind him. I locked up the office and walked to my truck. The pretty much night was cool and smelled like pine from the ridgelines. I drove back to my quarters and I slept, and I did not dream about any of it. That's the job. You do it, and you file the report, and you go to sleep, and you come back and do it again. You don't process it perfectly. You don't resolve it neatly. You just carry it forward, same as everyone who's done this work before you, and you hope the thing you carried forward was worth more than what you left behind. Most days, I think it's